Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I'm Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator of SAG-AFTRA. Our guest today, and I am super excited about this, is one of the most visionary, creative talents working today. Finneas O'Connell is a recording artist, actor, composer, and the force behind his sister Billie Eilish's music and chart-topping records as well for Selena Gomez, Halsey, and Camila Cabello. He's a two-time Academy Award winner, and I think if I read correctly, the youngest male to ever receive 2 Academy Awards, and an 11-time Grammy winner. And most recently, he composed the score for season 2 of the critically acclaimed Netflix series Beef. Finneas is also a proud SAG-AFTRA member and an outspoken advocate for artists' rights. Finneas, welcome so much to the SAG-AFTRA podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you.
So the first thing that we always like to do is talk to people about how they got their SAG-AFTRA card. So would you mind sharing the story of how you first became a member of SAG-AFTRA and got your card?
I was thinking about that on the drive up because obviously it's like coming down Wilshire and then saw like the logo. Yeah,
the very large logo.
The Emerald City. I believe this could be, mixing up my dates, but I believe I had finagled my way into having representation. My parents both had theatrical representation and whatever commercial representation. I asked if I could meet the kids department at Buchwald, which I think was where my mom, I assume, was represented. And then started doing auditions. My parents also do a fair amount of like voiceover. My mom has kept our SAG health insurance alive doing ADR, doing loop group my whole life. And so I would also like submit auditions for that stuff. And I think the first thing I did was some voiceover gig, which meant that I was part of AFTRA. And then I was the beneficiary of the merger. That's how I think I got my SAG card. I had got grandfathered in, which was like a thing that I remember, because again, there's a entry fee,
Yes.
And so I remember being AFTRA, and I remember being like, well, should I join SAG? And my parents were like, well, you can get Taft-Tart lead on this first thing, and then there's rumors that there may be a merger in the next 6 months, so hold tight. And then there was. So I was one of the beneficiaries of this merger.
I love it that you know that level of detail about this, because you are actually quite right that at the time of merger, that was a thing that people. This was 14 years ago, so I'm impressed you remember that.
Yeah, I think this was like after the on-screen job I did was this movie Bad Teacher when I was 12, and I think I was Taft-Tart lead for that, but I was already a member of AFTRA because I'd done some voiceover thing. So yeah, that's how I think it went.
And I mean, probably a lot of people recognize that you come from a creative family, but I'm not sure everybody recognizes how. I mean, there's at least 3, if not 4, members of your family who are active members of SAG-AFTRA, right? And
I assume all 4.
Yeah. And even in this town, that's not that common. I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, how did that sort of creative vibe that was going on in your home, I mean, did that really drive your development as an artist? Because you are quite a multifaceted artist. I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure, at the moment, for obvious reasons, are focused on your music career, but you have quite a filmography as well. And for those who might have forgotten, I haven't forgotten your work on Glee, singing and dancing. And in fact, let me just say that just for fun, I took a quick look at it again last night, and I'd forgotten what a dancer you are as well. So
I can't accept that compliment because it is fake news. I mean, listen, I love the performing arts. We grew up in a house where like our parents, put food on the table partially through odd jobs. Our dad was a handyman for, people we knew, and then people that referred him to other people. He also worked at Mattel for a long time. Our mom would like bake wedding cakes for people. She would teach various classes. She used to teach improv classes. She used to be a member of the Groundlings and then became a teacher at the Groundlings. Taught various forms of a fitness class also, and then they went on auditions. And so we would often be sort of accompany them to auditions. I remember going to their voiceover agency's office was so they could do their voiceover auditions. Very enamored with the powdered hot chocolate machine in the waiting room. That was like, well, my whole life is very Pavlovian. It was all like, you have an audition? Like, awesome. I'm going to get my little powdered hot chocolate. My dad would take me to Carney's, the train car off of whatever Sunset Boulevard. So it all just seemed like good fun, And then you see whatever it is. You see a movie, and there's a bunch of kids in the movie, and you think like, I want to be the kid in a movie, Yeah. And so that was like part of the genesis of that. Was like, let me go out for these auditions as a 12-year-old. I got nothing else to do. Yeah, but listen, I think that it is, especially thanks to all of your hard work and the hard work of your colleagues and coworkers, like. Especially in the film industry, although there are long hours, there are lots of protections for people under 18, and there's, the onset school, et cetera. And I think that the idea that, if you're lucky, you can participate in this world where you're going to make some income, you might make some residual income, you might turn 18 with some money either in your Coogan or some overall money. What a gift. Like, I remember turning 18 with the money I'd made from Bad Teacher as this like, wow, I have some money to buy myself a guitar or, a used car or something like that. And I also think that like being 12 and being on set in a very professional environment where there's not only adults working with you, but adults working really hard with you and expecting a kind of a level of decorum and professionalism that I think is good, So anytime my friends' parents or something are like, should I let my 11-year-old do this? I'm like, listen, if they want to do it, now you should never force your 11-year-old into this because that's ridiculous. But if they're really begging you to do it, like, I think it's a good thing to have done, even if for whatever reason life takes them in a totally different direction and they go study immunotherapy as an adult, it's like the fact that they had this thing that they went through as a kid, I think is awesome.
And that is a thing that happens. I mean, I've heard some stories of that. But as a parent, I have five kids myself, and I can say from my experience as a parent, like, you can tell if kids are into it or not, right? Yeah. As a parent, I would never want to force my kids to do that. But if they have a passion for it, I mean, we often say around here, like, if you're going to be in this industry, you've got to have a passion for it because it's a tough job.
I don't have kids yet, but I assume that part of it is how many times they'll repeat themselves, right? I think that's what my parents talk about with me wanting to try to meet with their representation and be represented by them was like, hey, can I have a meeting with your agent? I want to go on auditions. And they're like, okay. And then they kind of like sit on that for 2 weeks and see if it comes up again. I'm like, hey, when can I do that? And they're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sort of just by virtue of, it's like somebody wanting the same tattoo for 2 years or something. Like, okay. Yeah, seems like you've made up your mind.
if you've held on to it for that long, then there's something. Yeah, exactly. There's something real underneath that. That's for sure. Yeah. So 2015 was a big year for you, obviously, and so we're now 11 years later. Let's reflect on that.
Sure.
But that was Glee, right? That was your start. That was season 6 of Glee, and that was your start there. Your band played the Warped Tour. And then the song that you had written for your high school rock band, correct, went viral on SoundCloud in a collaboration between you and your sister. Like, that seems like one of those moments that we often hear about where people, it seems like they're an overnight success, but maybe it's not really overnight because this is the culmination of a lot of other things that sort of happened to converge at once. And I guess I'm curious, like, what that experience was like for you and how you stayed grounded going forward from that, because that's a lot to happen to somebody at that age and point in their career,
Yeah, I mean, the Glee part of that, which was the first 2 months of 2015, was interesting. I was the actual age that they were all supposed to be in Glee. I was 17. I'd done whatever. I'd graduated, so I was like legal 18. Which meant that was I think maybe required on that job because everyone else is 28 years old. So they're like, we're not going to hire somebody who can't work these like, adult hours.
I got to go to school. That's no good.
So I had whatever, I don't know if it's Chess Bee or whatever it is, but I was only on 4 episodes of that show, but they were the last 4 episodes, which is a funny thing because if you do a 4-episode arc on something in the middle, if you're doing 4 episodes in season 3 of 8. those, they could just fly by. But because it was like the last 4 episodes, it's like I'm playing this small role, but every actor who'd ever been on the show is coming back for like their, series finale moments. Everybody's crying on set,
So it was pretty emotional.
It was very emotional. I mean, it wasn't, I had a front row seat. I wasn't like pretending that it was that I had that investment. You know what I mean? I didn't spend 8 years making that show. But it was cool and rigorous, and felt a little bit like going to some, intensive program somewhere. It was like, very long shoot days. I think my memory was that we always worked 6-day weeks. We would go to dance rehearsal in the morning for a couple hours and then be on set, and then sometimes at night we'd wrap, and then they would send us to a recording studio to do the vocal for the thing that we were shooting the next day. So it was like, again, I especially at that age was like, I was really sure that I wanted to be in the entertainment industry, and so I really relished all that hard work. You know what I mean? I think I kind of had sat around like wishing for something that intense. And then again, just like we're talking about, was making some money on that show, and was like, awesome, I can afford to book studio time to put my band into a studio and make an EP, which we immediately did. And then to your point about playing Vans Warped Tour, we'd played a Battle of the Bands the summer earlier, and we'd won. And so then, because we had won the Battle of the Bands, we got to play only the Pomona date of the the Warped Tour. So we were no sort of celebrated band. We just had won a contest basically. And then 2015 was also the year that like I had been homeschooled because I was acting, but my high school friends, the people in my band, were all graduating high school that year. So a few of them were going to go off to college or community college, whatever. And I had already sort of thought like, I want to pursue this. But also when you say I want to pursue this from 14 to 18 rolls around and you think like, oh my God, I'm, you're when you're not 5 Seconds of Summer or, one of the stars of a Nickelodeon or Disney Channel show, they're like a little bit of the panic that I think maybe hits other kids when they get out of college was hitting me at, 18.
Like career panic is
life panic. Just of like,
okay.
I have not at all pursued, higher education, and I'm 18, which is still pretty, there's a lot you can't do. You can't go into a bar unless you have a fake ID, which I didn't, and so I was nervous that summer. My high school girlfriend was going off to college in New York. There was a lot of kind of like, I felt pretty stressed out. And so the fact that that year ended with the songs Billy and I were making in our bedroom getting some traction, one of them doing very well on the website SoundCloud, like your point of like, how did it not go to your head? Like I was mainly just like relieved. I was like, oh my God, like thank God we've got, it was like throwing a fishing line in the ocean and like getting something. I was like, they're biting. This is huge. And I also felt stressed by it because I wanted to not squander the opportunity and make sure to sort of like stick the landing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an experience I think a lot of our listeners and members will really that'll resonate with them, because even when you're in that moment of success, there's always that concern about, is it going to continue? How do you maintain that? And obviously, looking back, there's a different perspective than there was at the time. I'm also really curious. I mean, you have so many. You're a multi hyphenate in the things that you've done. Do you feel like as you've grown, as your career has evolved, like that you find yourself channeled in one direction, or are you still as interested in and engaged in the various aspects of your creative life as you always have been?
I think the answer is yes to both. I'm a big fan and enthusiast of all of these things, right? And then there are things where I sort of feel my own lack of innate ability, or my own sort of like innate feeling of like, I understand that very quickly. And so I try to recognize those things. You know what I mean? Like if I put 10,000 hours into singing and dancing up on a stage, I am just not going to be Bruno Mars ever. It's just not it's not in my bones. And so like, even though I love to be singing and dancing up on a stage, like I have a kind of a recognition of like, might not be where the 10,000 hours should go. And then as a producer, co-writer or something, I have this real feeling of like confidence and assuredness, and I see the yield, you know? And so I think like I have tried to kind of lean into the things that I sort of think like, oh, the more I work at this, the better I get at it, you know? So I definitely do all of it. A friend of mine calls it cross training. You know, you're like, oh, I've gotten better at this thing because I've tried this other thing. But again, anytime there's something where I think like, ooh, I really think I have a handle on this. Let me lean in. Let me dig into that and try to get even better at that thing. You know.
But it's not going to be dancing.
It's definitely not going to be dancing.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying again. I rewatched a couple of these episodes of Glee in preparation for today. I just want to say, I mean, you know, your dancing looked pretty good. I have to say, maybe there's some like, you know,
I haven't kept up with it. And I'm also surrounded by everybody else on Glee is like a Broadway star. And so you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're playing a high school character, so it's very like there's an authenticity element.
Yes, I just mean that if there's 8 of you on stage and your eyes are kind of glazed over and you're looking at 8 figures moving, you're seeing like 2 Tony nominees and then a Tony winner and then me. And I think you're kind of like, I don't know, it's like when you read a sentence and there's words with typos and you don't read it and then you read it again, you think, oh my God, there's typos in that. I'm a typo in that.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. So I also wanted to ask you about field recording because like real world sounds being brought into your music. And this is at least from my, and I'm not a music expert, but I am a music fan and I listen to a lot of music. And this is not, from my observation, super common. So how did that develop for you? And maybe can you talk a little bit about why this is a recurring theme? I mean, I think even in Beef,
tons in Beef.
Yeah.
More in Beef than in stuff in the last 10 years, or I guess maybe 8 years. I just have always been a fan. When I hear like sound design, sound effects in music, when I see it in film and television, and it sticks out in a good way, I'm gassed. I'm really excited about it. So when Billy and I were first starting to record, here's part of it. Like, I'm interested in having something unique. You know, if I'm paging through built-in presets on a program like Logic or on a keyboard, it's like I have a kind of an awareness of like, anyone who pays $200 for this program will have this sound. What's a thing that no one will have, right? And so then I'd get these little Tascam recorders. An iPhone works just as well, but at the time their microphones were not as, you know, hi-fi. So I would get these little recorders and I would just sort of like do experiments. I'd be like, hey, slam the back door of the house. Billy would slam it. And I'd be like, cool. And I'd take that little sample and I'd be like, snare drum, there you go. I remember Billy, one of the things that helps her like ADHD is she draws a lot while we work. And she had like a yellow highlighter pen and she was going like, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so I put a metronome on. I was like, do that, but do it in a sort of an even time. And she did it and I recorded that. And it was just like, I always liked the kind of texture of it. And then certainly like anytime it would become literal, that felt like a easy thing to be inspired by. We had a song about setting somebody's car on fire really early on. And so I had her like striking all these matches and then we blew out the matches and that became this cool percussive thing. And so, you know, fast forward to Beef, same thing. I'm like, okay, this show largely takes place at a country club. What does that sound like? And also from a musical standpoint, like it helps to inspire me because I'm like, what are things I've never recorded? If I've made music for 10 years plus, what's something that I've never done? Like never recorded a sprinkler system, never recorded bees buzzing around. Like there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, that's going to inspire me and inspire something musically in me. So I'm grateful to the sort of muse in all sound.
That sounds very intentional.
Yeah.
Are there times when you're just like walking around like out in public and you hear something, you go, oh my God, that's a sound I want to capture, and you just like grab your phone or you have a recorder in your pocket?
100%. A perfect example of that would be early 2018, we were touring in Australia. They have crosswalks that sound really different from our crosswalks. They go like, and they do this cool thing. And Billy and I are like, that is sick. And Billy held her iPhone up to it and recorded it. And then we used it as this like percussive sort of like stick loop on the chorus of Bad Guy. And that had no kind of like narrative component. We just thought it sounded really interesting. And then it was like, oh, let's put that there. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I hadn't really thought about it this way, but the point you made about how this means you have some kind of a sound that's unique and isn't something that anybody else is going to be able to pull up out of, various toolkits or samples or whatever that they're getting out of, the sort of, DAWs and other technology that are being used. That makes a lot of sense. Can I ask you about your connection with SAG-AFTRA? Like what has been the most meaningful aspect of being part of a union for you, as a multifaceted creative talent?
Well, I live in LA. And so I would say that although several of the years I felt like an out-of-work actor because I was, the infrastructure of the union has an inclusive feel to it. And there are the many, SAG member screenings of not only new films, but legacy films. I mean, like I have a vivid memory of being like 17 and going with my mom to see like a Thelma and Louise screening, where I think the director and one of the stars, did a Q&A afterward, and I believe that was all free. I think that the sort of forever student in me has loved that sort of feeling of being in these places. When all from your youth is like being a member of this, well-established, union that does go on strike and renegotiates and stuff. Like you get into the music space and it's very unregulated. So I think that was eye-opening because all you know is all you know until you know something else and you think like, oh, I see,
Yeah, one of the things that we are constantly trying to put out there, and it's hard to get this information into everyone's hands, is for music people, specifically for recording artists. They can get their health insurance through us.
Sure, that's what my family was covered by. Our mom earning enough through her ADR career to cover our family on the SAG healthcare plan.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you have like if you have a deal with a record label where you're recording for them, that also all of the major labels and a bunch of indies are signed to our sound recordings code, and so there's a lot of people who get health insurance who may not even really understand that they have access to it, and we're always trying to put that information out there. And if you're a recording artist, of course, as I'm sure you are well aware, the way advances work, it can be kind of weird because you might get a lot of money in 1 year and then have no money coming in because recoupment is happening for a couple of years. And there's a special rule that applies to that for recording artists so that you can maintain health coverage even in years when your advance is still in recoupment.
Right.
So really, I think that that recording artists need that protection just as much as actors do and everybody else. I mean, that's why, that's what we're here to do. And whether it's health, whether it's retirement, these are things that a lot of people don't want to think about because it's like, I want to be creative. I'm not interested in this business stuff, but having health insurance when you need it is critical. Having a retirement someday, like everyone should have that right, I feel like. Finneas, do you have any words of encouragement or advice for your fellow SAG-AFTRA members who might still be in the early stages of their careers as they look to the future?
Sure. I think that the way that we were raised by working class, people who were sometimes performers and sometimes teachers and handymen, it's like, the thing that was always illustrated to us was like that the thing you're passionate about is worth doing. And maybe it'll make you some money and maybe it'll make you none, but that to live a life that you're passionate about is the important thing. And that if you can subsidize that in some way, then that's, sort of a vision of success. Like that was always, it was never like, I don't know. I remember having friends where I was like, I want to do this for a living. And I remember them being like, what if you're poor? And I remember being like, whatever, like that.
If you're doing what you love.
Yeah, I remember being like like hell on earth sounds like doing a job for 10 hours a day that I hate, that feels like a misery, even if I drive home in a fancy car, So I think that would be the the thing I would say to a young aspiring person who wants to be in the industry would be just like, if it's the thing you're passionate about and it feels good to do for free, then that's the right thing to pursue, because each of those steps will feel good. And I also think people are very sort of like all or nothing about the whole thing. I have friends who say odd things to me where they're like, I never want to compromise my whatever. I'm like, life is long and wide. Like, you can do a little bit of everything, It's okay to do this thing that feels like very prestigious and cool, and then do this little, side gig that feels a little bit like, you're spinning a sign in an intersection or something. That's, you know what I mean? Who cares?
That's life.
Whenever I see a guy spinning a sign in an intersection, by the way, I think that looks hard.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think that looks really hard. He's really good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Finneas, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it.